Today with you again, representing diversity Premedical. We have the pleasure and honor of Dr. Bruce Peters to be with us today. Dr. Bruce Peters is an osteopathic physician who specializes in pediatrics, internal medicine, and addiction medicine while working as a full-time professor and faculty member at Nova Southeastern University, Karen C. Patel College of Osteopathic Medicine. He currently trains medical students on how to become doctors and trains new doctors, interns, and residents how to become even better doctors in their chosen specialty or field of study. He currently oversees the pediatric departments and training in both Tampa, Clearwater, and the Fort Lauderdale Davie campus. He also is responsible for training their medical students in both pediatrics and other courses, both local and all over the country until they graduate. He currently serves on multiple committees, teaches in multiple courses while using the latest technology, including virtual reality and online learning. Wow, that's a lot. And again, we're so honored because I truly believe, knowing you, that the conversation can go very deep and cover such a large span, and I'm so grateful for this because our intention, Dr. Peters, is to just connect with the pre-med students and empower them, so they're walking a walk that you've already done, and I'm sure you can share some wisdom with them because you've been in that space where you were a high school student curious about the sciences. You've been a college student, undergrad student, a grad student, now physician, also a dean of a college, and a person in practice, physician in practice. So you cover the full span. Then, what we're trying to do is, again, empower, but inform them,
Okay.
prepare them so that they're, more able to present best and be ready, and so they can be competitive in this space. So again, thank you so much.
No, glad to be here with you. Looking forward to this.
Thanks. So what we'll start with is something a little fun, which I call speed questions. And just to give you a first thought, we want to get to know you a little bit beyond the sciences.
Okay.
Because I know you're also a family man, so hopefully we have enough time to at least talk about that. And a man of faith. There's more. There's just so more to unpack. So I want them to know that of you. So let me begin with the questions. Just your first thought. Your favorite song?
My favorite song right now would probably be "Holy Hallelujah." Would be my favorite song right now.
Interesting. Okay, so your favorite car, but here's the catch to it. Your favorite car, if your kids were all grown and it's just you and your wife, what would be that favorite car?
Probably a Maserati.
Okay, all right. Your favorite book?
Right now, I would probably say it's the Bible. Something I've sort of hang my faith on.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite sport?
Basketball.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Remembering the Titans.
Okay. And a food or dessert that you enjoy, but you feel guilty after you eat it. What's that?
Oh man, probably be the cheesecake. That there's like this big chocolate turtle mixed with nuts that they use after Cheesecake Factory. It's so delicious.
I'm sure some people can relate to that. Oh my God. And then your Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
PC or Mac?
Mac.
Okay. All righty. Good to know. Good to know all that stuff about you. So I guess we'll begin with, trying to unpack so much about you.
Okay.
I want them to understand. So you are a married man as well?
Yes, for 31 years now.
31, blessings. And
Yes.
how many children?
2.
Wow. Okay. And how old are they? What grades and how old?
One is going to be 17 next month. He's going into the senior year of high school. The other one is 20 now, and he is going into his second year of college.
Wow. What major? I'm curious for the college kid.
Uh, Interested in business, and it's a combination of business, ministry, and dentistry. So he's trying to do it all.
Okay. Interesting. I know sometimes when the parents are in in one profession, sometimes the kids go to total opposite. So I was just
Hmm.
curious about that.
Yes.
Okay. So what inspired you when if you would have looked back before undergrad, like what inspired you to start to consider medicine if you did so that early?
And that's a good question because I actually thought about it. My mom told me I really thought about when I was actually in early elementary school,
Wow.
uh, where I was used to get these little toy doctor kits, and I was able to play with them. I was feeling like I would be a doctor, or something. I would get feeling like I would get something to practice on, like an animal or a stuffed animal or something, like I was doctoring on them or something, or taking care of them. That's how it all sort of, as far as I know, how my spark got started. And it got, but it, as you go through your childhood, you sort of lose it because you think about basketball, you see cars, you want to be a truck driver, you want to be a policeman, you just see still so many things you want to be. But it came back to me when I really got to high school, though. But really, that first spark was when I was probably elementary school, when I first at least thought about it. Because one time I was sick in the hospital, and I didn't know I was going to be able to get out, and the doctors took care of me and said, and they asked me, well, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be like you.
Oh
Is one of the
wow.
things I told them. So,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
a long, long time ago.
Interesting. And then you started, when you got into college, you stayed on that track. You were, quite certain about going into the health sciences at college level.
Yes, yes, but wasn't I was to say I wasn't 100% sure because I didn't know if I would be able to qualify or not, because I knew I came from inner city high school, went all throughout my elementary school, middle school, all through public schools. And then when I got to college, I looked around and I was everybody around me was like a valedictorian of their class where I went to college at. They were either number one and number two in their school. And they weren't majoring in science, they were just in whatever they wanted to do. But I looked at them, I said, I wasn't at the top of my class. I was sort of like in the middle there, sort of upper 25% or so.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm competing with all these people who are like valedictorians, and
Wow.
they were all gun ho and was 100% sure what they wanted to do, and they already been well prepared because they already had the training, the background in terms of test taking skills, study habits, and I was still trying to learn and understand all of that.
And I'm glad you said that, and I appreciate that honesty, because there's so many of us that can relate to that. Like you're trying to figure things out. So
Yes.
if you could stay in that same time frame, if you will, and how did you do that? How did you pull it together so that you can continue focused? Like
Okay.
what did you pull as your resources? Like, did you have a father figure or uncles? Like who helped you?
No, I really didn't. I grew up with a single parent mom, and unfortunately, she was, she quit school when she was like in eighth grade to take care of her younger siblings to help them get through school. So when she
Mm,
moved up in the South, there was not much that she could do in terms of skilled labor. So she got jobs as like a housekeeper or a cleaner for different people just to make money to make our help us survive. And I think one of the things that was fortunate was that when I was born, one of the doctors that delivered her, she took care of her, sort of clean her home as on a regular basis, like on a weekly basis. And she sort of took an interest in me, saw that my mother would bring me to work with her, and this doctor would give me books, like little books to play with. And I couldn't read them or anything, but it was just to play when she saw I had an interest in it. Then she started giving me some real books to read.
mm.
And that sort of sparked my interest in terms of like loving sciences and just understanding, wow, there's a whole different world from these four walls that I'm always stuck in all the time. And I think that encouragement to at least pursue looking at science got me started. But it was always hard, it was like when you went to elementary school, you would always have people around you who really didn't care that much about the sciences and math, and they just want to have fun in school, have a
Mhm.
good time. You wouldn't try to fit in, and that was the hard part. You were trying to fit in, but you still had this little part of you that said, "Well, I have an interest over here." And it took a look. It really took a teacher that said, "Okay, Bruce, I know you're having fun. You've been a class clown most of the time, and you have a lot of friends now. But I see something in you that you really should probably consider pursuing something in the science because you seem like you're really good at it if you really put your mind to it."
At what grade level was that?
that was like around 7th or 8th grade. And I said, wow, you can see all that in me? I said,
Uh,
and they said, yes, because they use, like, you're really good at math, you work, you stay focused. And they sort of challenged me. So they started giving me more work to do and gave me little projects to do. And I enjoyed those things. And then by the time I got to high school, um, again, I sort of fitted back into that one to fit in kind of mode where you just sort of like try to be a part of the crowd. At least I knew I needed to work hard, and they saw something in me that sort of made me at least think about college. Because at that point, I was thinking about maybe I could become a truck driver or a mailman, because I could see all these other people around me and what they were doing, and they seemed like they had a job and they could take care of their families. And I said, well, maybe I could do that as well.
Gotcha. That's so, yeah, many of us can relate. You know, and sometimes in for men in particular, like we're drawn to wanting to make the money, the desire to make money.
Oh yeah.
And some of us get trapped in, you know, materialism. And sometimes it could be for survival too, right? Like we just want to make money to survive. And so that kind of deters us, right?
And I think that was my mode. I really was part of just wanting to survive, because I knew my mom was working cleaning houses, and and I had to make money with any way I could, whether it's doing a paper route, working in stores. I had a job as an usher. I had a job as a paint factory. And one time, I think between high school, I had like 2 or 3 jobs all at the same time
Mm.
after school, where I had to go to just to make money to help us survive.
And so then to have the audacity to think about going to grad school in light of all the pressures and needs that one has, right?
Oh
So
yes.
how did you you know, get the courage and the fortitude to push forward that way? Because were you the first in your family to do that?
Yes, yes, and
Okay.
I think it took on my part, because the schools that I applied to, I was blessed that I was able to the high school counselors were able to sort of guide me in terms of applying to colleges and things like that. But they also helped me to understand that even though you're doing really good towards these last few years of high school, you're going to be competing with people who are doing excellent, who've been doing this all their life. You just sort of starting to pick up the pace, understanding what to do academically. And so they encouraged me. And so when I did apply, I got accepted to the 3 or 4 colleges that I applied to, and they weren't that far from my house. One was in like in Evanston, Illinois, and that's what was my first choice. So I went there, and I think the thing that helped me was they were sort of honest with me. They looked at my grades and said, "Wow, you did really good your last 2 years of high school. You got like almost all A's and stuff." But then they looked at my ACT or SAT scores and said, "Wow, you're a little bit sort of low end of the spectrum here, but you're still good though. But just keep in
BB.
mind that everyone else out there is way up there in terms of their scores."
Yeah.
And so they put me into the summer program. It was like a pre-college program. Like before college started, they brought us up 6 weeks before, gave you a little tour to college. They got you used to what it's like to sit in a classroom in a college setting, what it's like to hear professors talking to you and taking notes, and they work with you in
Those are
terms of your
so good.
study habits. They
Those are
work with
so
you how
good.
to stay focused. They work with you about how to avoid distractions. And so that really started me on the right foot, even though it was a challenge, and I still got my butt kicked when I got there. But at
Hmm.
least it put me in the right direction, though.
You know what? And I'm aware of these programs. It escapes me what they're labeled as now. But anyhow, the intention of these pre-college programs, like some
Mhm.
people, some egos are bruised by doing it, or you know,
It's
they'll
humbling.
refrain from doing it. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
But it's
very
so
humbling.
needed. It's so you know we got to. If the foundation's not there, we got to do it.
And you're absolutely right, because I remember that, and there's only when I think about when I got to the college, it was only maybe the population for underrepresented minorities over there were probably less than 5%. And I can remember all of us sitting around at a table talking, and within a year's time, I could slowly see some of them fading out because of grades, getting out because of distractions, drugs, alcohol, partying too much, girls, whatever it may be. They were all pulled. There was many of them, and so when I looked into my first year of college, I looked around, there weren't that many of us still left,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And just you know the lack of preparedness, right? I mean, there's
Oh
other
yes.
societal challenges, but
Oh
also the
yes.
lack of preparedness. And it is unfortunate, you know, and I always preface by saying, you know, not all of us, right? But just there are some of us, right?
Right.
That really need to get the help and the preparation, you know, so that's how we survive. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So now you're in, right? Now you're in. How's that experience? Now you're in college, you got your foot in the door. I'm curious how you were able to sustain and stay focused.
it was hard. And one of the things I think that has helped me, and I think even though there was the social side of college, I started down that route a little bit by joining, going to joining the fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha initially, pledged the fraternity, got that out the way, and then I sort of put my mindset into just really buckling down and focusing on studying and working toward my major, what I was interested in. And the
Mhm.
major I chose, I didn't choose a major that everyone else chose. I chose a major that I thought was good for my path toward medicine, but also that gave me hopefully a slight edge, because a lot of people didn't choose that particular major, and that was biochemistry. So as I chose that particular field, I knew as I was going along, it was getting harder and harder and harder. But one of the things that I was able to do was I was able to find 2 or 3 people who was very interested in that same major, who surrounded. We all got together and became study buddies, study habits, and
Nice.
we would go there, open up the library in the morning, like 6 or 7 in the morning, go to our classes, come back after, eat lunch at the library, eat dinner at the library, and then close down the library when the library closed at 2 a.m. in the morning. And that was our daily routine, to get through the classes, to pull together notes from each of the different things that we learned from, test each other, challenge each other, help each other.
So, want to encourage the pre-meds, like, to not go into this experience. You have to change your mindset. Definitely once you go into an intense discipline, right? So
Oh, yes.
the same would apply to grad school, but I'm going to stay with undergrad for a moment, because I think sometimes some of us go into college and we carry old habits where you were getting by doing things independently.
Hmm.
So what you just perfectly illustrated is that you wanted to be successful, and you humbled yourself to, no, I need to be part of a collective, so that
Hmm.
you help each other, right?
Right.
So that is so important for people to be open to that.
But it didn't
Because
come without mistakes, though. I did make my fair number of mistakes going through college, going through studying habits, where I would study like the night before, and I found that didn't work. I would make other mistakes where I would get together and just try to. They would give you these sort of like essay kind of tests, and you really can't fool them about an essay, because you either know it or you don't, because they can tell. It's not like I put a certain answer. You got to be able to tell the details of things. And I had
mhm,
these elaborate stories, and they filled up pages and pages, and and then they sort of called me in and they said. They said, "Mr. Peters, what are you doing? I mean, this doesn't make this is nonsense. This is garbage.
mm,
You're cheating yourself. Learn this stuff. Get help. Come to tutoring. Come to get help from us."
okay,
And from that time on, I realized there's no like those habits from high school and things like that, where you can sort of, I can sort of fool them a little bit this way, because I can learn a little bit about the subject and sort of fill in the gaps. No,
gotcha.
they knew the details, and they wanted me to know the details, and they weren't
Awesome.
playing.
I'm
And when I
glad.
saw that D
Mhm.
in my card and my grade, that woke me up. That woke me
Wow.
up.
So you hear that, guys? A dean, a doctor, yes, had an experience where he had a D.
Not the only one, unfortunately. I had some others, but I learned how to recover.
Yeah. So from those experiences, that's what pulled you into the collective, where you were like, okay, I need to get help.
Get help
Okay,
and surround myself
cool,
with people who had the same like-mindedness that I had, who was
awesome.
focused.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's real talk. That's real. Okay, so that's undergrad, and then you go to, you start thinking about going to grad. Um, so how did you prepare yourself, like how did you set your foundation up ending grad so that you can be competitive for graduate school?
Well, I sort of looked at the goal and what they were looking for. I knew that they were one of the goals was they had to do well in these standardized tests, what they call the MCAT. And I knew I had never taken this test before. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know any friends. So I started talking to people who took the test before, and they sort of gave me an insight to what it was. And I went to sit, I think I actually started going to these preparatory sessions where they were free initially, then you had to sort of pay into it to keep going. And so I took advantage of that. I started each summer and started taking the summers off between work. I had to work over something to help pay my bills. But I also went to these weekends and evening sessions on these preparatory classes for this particular test. And I did that every summer leading up to the
Mhm.
point that I wanted to apply. And that was how I sort of got my focus and got hopefully the confidence to do at least halfway decent on that particular test.
Now, did you do any shadowing or volunteer work?
I did a little because I knew that they wanted that as part of my application. So I went to the hospitals and volunteered as an orderly, transporting patients from different places, from place to place in the hospital once or twice a week. But I had to do that in between my studying time, in between my part-time jobs, because even when I was in college, I still kept 3 jobs. One job I had exclusively on the weekends so I could work and make some money. One job I worked after class to help clean labs and things like that to help make money. And then I think I just took a job from one of the local communities where I went in and worked at a factory, bolts and things like that, putting things together for parts and things they were making. And it just to pay the bill. I had to do what I had to do
Wow.
to pay the bill.
So you didn't, when you say that, that I guess that's done to clarify that you did not go to college on a free ride. Am I
No, I had some of my scholarship money, but that didn't go hardly anywhere, unfortunately.
okay?
It got you to the door, but it didn't take you anywhere.
Gotcha. And like, okay, so that's hard. And I guess the point I want to bring up is that there's drive, they call it grit. So nowadays they call it grit. Like, what was going on within you to make you drive like that?
Wow. And it's hard. You think about your family. You think about your mom, the sacrifice that she made for her, for her to stop her education and then support herself and the family. And I also thought about the doctor that delivered me, who my mom worked for. She was actually a female physician that was from Germany who came over to America, and she was the first female in her class at Loyola University in Chicago. And she's talked to me about, as I got a little bit older, about all the things that she had to go through because being the only female in the entire medical school class. And
Mm.
then
Oh, please
also
say her
about
name. Please say her name.
her name was Dr. Helen Button. Helen Button. And she
Mm,
talked to me about all the things that she had to go through being the only female in the school, and all the pressure she had to go under competing with men in a male role and male mark and male profession at the time, and all that she had to go through. And she was an obstetrician, she was a surgeon, but her biggest life mission was going back and forth to Africa to treat and take care of children and families there. And she told me about that, and I was just shocked. I said, wow. I just could never imagine seeing her and then seeing the work that she did and all the things that she told me about that she had to go through. And I said, she could have gone through that. I know I can do that.
wow. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because there's so much I want to talk about with you. Because to hear you mention her now, it helps me further understand the things that you've been doing that I know about that I'd love for this audience to know about because you also have led missionary trips
Oh,
for
yes.
many years. Can you
Yes.
explain what that is to those that may not be familiar?
Yes, many times it's, at least for me, it was using my talents that we've been blessed with to take care of other people who are underserved in many communities who can't afford health care. Places like Haiti, right after her earthquake, and all the years after earthquake, Jamaica, where they have very, very poor underserved areas, Dominican Republic, and just so many other areas. But before I even did where I left the United States to go and do missions elsewhere, even when I was in medical school, I started off doing healthcare to the homeless. Started my second year of medical school, and from that point on, when I saw that there were people that I was surrounded by, even though I saw myself struggling growing up, they had absolutely nothing. They were living in shelters, living on the streets. We
Mm,
had this place in Chicago where they actually lived underneath the streets, underneath the rivers, because it was so cold above ground during the wintertime that many of them would not survive. And just to see their struggles and being able to take care of them, and each year I would go back and take care of them and made it a part of my practice. So I would still have my private practice, but I also spend time going back to take care of them in the shelters as I went to medical school, residency, and even after I went and practiced in Chicago. I always kept my practice part as going back to take care of the homeless, those
mm.
who are underserved.
Yeah, I often would share throughout the years, if I had med students that wanted to give back in such a way, I would say that, tell them the programs that you've been running to see if they wanted to do it abroad. So thank you so much for doing that. That speaks so much about who you are. Which leads me to how important is your faith to you? That just always rang out to me, but I'd love for people to understand that about you.
Right. And I think to me, being a Christian healthcare provider, I think one of the experiences I always share with people is it gives me sort of like an unwavering ability to just love people for who they are, no matter what they're gone through, who they are, or where they're at, caring for them, putting myself, being able to walk in their shoes and understand that the struggles that they had to go through and what their needs are, and then just helping to meet those needs with my God-given talents. And I count it as like a blessing or a joy for each time I get a chance to serve them. Um, and not looking for anything in return, even though they want, sometimes they'll say thank you, many times they may not, because they're just so, they've been beat down so much. They just sometimes just want to get something out of you and keep it moving. But many times just to be able to love on them and just also be able to provide encouragement to kids who are sort of struggling, looking like you can see them and you can see those kids and see where you were and seeing that they have potential, and knowing that you can love on them and care for them and hopefully even help support them as they move on to their schooling. And one of the things I did, even not just by serving, but I also help support them as they, for those who didn't have money to help them go through school locally where they're at, whether in Africa, India, wherever they were at, and just provide support. So at least get this a foundation for getting started with an education, and from
Mhm.
that point on, they can take off and do whatever they want to do at that point.
Now, how was your? Thank you for that. How was your med school experience?
It was interesting. I got to medical school, and again, my challenge was, again, it was a very, very competitive market. So I really only got accepted to one medical school, and that was the one in Chicago. And again, it was probably one of my first choices, next to first choices, I think. But I found out I was only one of two African American students in the entire class of 100 and some students. One male and Miles was a female. Um, and so it was very difficult because you had professors there who didn't really think that you belong. So they wouldn't give you the time of day. They wouldn't give you any extra help. Um, and surprisingly though, as I was getting near the end of my first year of medical school, one of the challenges I had, I saw myself working hard, and I thought I was doing pretty good. And at the very end, I had no idea that one of the things they said, we're going to come in and talk to you. And they came in and said, you did pretty good. You came pretty close. Uh, but not quite good enough to go into your second year. I said, what do you mean? I thought I passed everything. It said, there's one test you were like a point short here, and there's other
Mhm.
tests you're like a point short there. I said, but yeah, but I can take a makeup. But he said, but you really don't qualify for a makeup because our rule is if you fail one class here and one class there, you don't have enough credits to go on. Well, I said, what do I have to do? What does that mean? I have to leave? They said, no, you just have to repeat the whole year. I said, but I passed everything else. And so what ultimately ended up happening was, well, you can't go into your second year, but the class not offered again until the fall of next year and then the spring of next year. So at least you can, do something else until then.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the most devastating points. In medical school, I thought I was able to quit, but it said, no, you just have to go back and do it again.
Mm.
And so they made me audit all my classes all over again, but I had to pass those stupid classes that I just missed it by a point and wasn't
Wow.
allowed to have a makeup. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up working nights. I went to school during the days to do the auditing classes, worked nights at a University of Chicago as a front desk person. So I would take care of the students and things there from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until like midnight, go home, sleep, get up and do the same thing for the entire year.
Mm.
And eventually I had to go back. I did my second year. I got that out the way, and I went on from there. I just called it a lesson learned and realized that there was not going to be anyone there helping me. I could not count on anyone but myself and trusting God to get me through.
But so wow, that's just wow. I'm so grateful that you would share that, because again, some people have the perception that now that you are a practicing physician and you were a dean of a medical school, like you must have been this brainiac with no flaws like this, and you've just like showed us that no, like you had your challenges too. So thank
Oh
you
yes.
so much for.
Oh
I'm
yes.
sure that's going to speak to people. um, and so, what did you have to change? Now, we're talking grad school. What did you have to like change so that your next year was more successful? What did you do?
I really had to let go of all distractions. I had to let go of family distractions. I had to let go of friends. I had to let go of extracurricular activities, even though just things I enjoy, exercising, um, getting involved in community service activities, things like that, just to put my entire focus into study, make sure I was not put in that position again, so that
Hmm.
I could continue, at least finish the program and go on from there. Uh, and I think and I think one of the things that sort of gave me the motivation, because I sort of saw there was eventually years students coming behind me who were sort of in that same situation, who were also minorities, but they weren't willing to go the extra mile, and they ended up dropping out or quitting, or going on to become doing something else other than going into medicine, going down the medical path, even
Hmm.
though they got to that point.
It's a tough one. It definitely is a tough. It requires, someone with drive. You got to be drive. You can't like, it's almost, I feel like you have to have be hungry. I'm sure you've heard of this before. Like, how hungry are you?
Yes,
This is not
yes,
like, oh, maybe I want to be a doctor. No, you got to
no,
like dig in. You got to go deep.
no, no. At that point, it was to me, it was no other option.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was no other option for me.
And then you know what I would also like to hear, because we're running short on time, is what's a day in a life for you as a practicing, well, you are you're not in private practice per se full time, but I'm curious about what's a day in a life look like for you?
Uh, and it's because I'm still between academic medicine and clinical medicine. Um, the days sort of run together. So you get up in the morning, you prepare for your lessons, your lectures and things that you're going to give, their presentations. Now it's Zoom meetings because everything's because of COVID. But you prepare for your lectures, and then you give those presentations. You go into the office, you see patients from like 8 or 8:30 until like 4:30, 5 o'clock. Then come back and do your evening classes, because some classes are not able to take place during the daytime because there's so much going on. And then you teach until 7 or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. And then you prepare for the next day for the lectures and things that you're going to be doing. And then you're also checking patients' lab results, following up on tests, giving them callbacks, and doing all this all the time between your day, during your lunch break, doing your between class times and things like that. And you're also preparing student lectures and things like that when you have downtime when you're seeing patients. So it's a balance between going back and forth between the academic side and the clinical side. But it's enjoyable though, because you can see the knowledge, be able to share the knowledge and be able to inspire students as they go forward in their professional careers as well.
You've worn so many hats. We're so lucky to be talking with you, because the question I have, is there's a rigor to graduate school, medical school, um, and there's a toughness that I see that students have to be put through.
Yes.
Um, what is by Can you give me, what is the design of it? What is the intention so that one can mentally get prepared to go down this path of going to medical school? What is the intention of the large course load? What is the intention of it being so rigorous? What from an academic hat,
Hmm.
so that they can get ready for this mentally.
And it's hard to sort of put it in words. But one thing that I will say though, it is to be able to be a self learner, be able to learn on the go, and also being a lifelong learner. And I think that's the key, being a lifelong learner, because even though you go to medical school for those 4 years, then you have residency, and then that's another level to your learning, and then you have your actual clinical practice, which brings it up to another level of practice, because you're dealing with people, patients, learning from them, learning about their habits and lifestyles and things like that. That also impacts their health, and things that you may not even know about because of different cultures and things that people may be coming from in different walks of life and faith and things like that. So you have all this put together, but you also have the ability to be able to be flexible, uh, to be able to push yourself even further when you're tired and things like that, because you got to realize, even though you're tired, you still got to take care of somebody's life whose life is going to be dependent upon how well you perform. And that's the thing that sort of drives you. One day you're going to be put in a position where you're going to be responsible for someone's life or many people's lives, and that you have to be able to step up to the plate and not back down, not to have excuses about being too tired. I have other things, other distractions, where you can focus in on just making sure you mentor and save that life that's in front of you.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
it's hard. People don't sometimes understand that it's hard, it's challenging, but it really doesn't start there. It really starts even before you even get to school. And this is what I try to tell parents, is that many times we come from a culture from Afro Americans and many cultures, not just Afro American cultures,
Hmm.
where you used to wanted to control your kids. You want to tell them, don't do this. You slap their hand, you hit them and beat them, say, because you're trying to control them and trying to discipline them and hopefully get them going in the right direction. But part of the other thing that you also have to realize is when you're trying to control them, you don't allow them the opportunity to explore things. You don't allow them to learn from their mistakes. You don't allow them to make their own mistakes and then learn from those and build upon it and continue to grow and learn from those experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, sometimes they run to a wall and they get beaten down. They'll just give up because that's what they've been told. Because mom said I can't do this, I can't do that. I got to go back and listen to what mom said or dad do. So if there's somebody in the world tells you you can't go any further than where you are right now, they're going to turn around and walk the other way because they've been beaten down. And then
Mm-hmm.
they've been to that wall where they've been hit, knocked down, told they can't do it, and they have to respond by saying, yes, sir, no, sir, okay, sir. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
just pushing through that and going to the next step and trying to get around whatever their barrier is that's keeping them from their dream or from their hopes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's so much to unpack there, but I just can't. We need a part two. Yeah, we need a part two because I tell you, I care a lot about um, people getting through this experience,
Hmm.
particularly those that are, of ethnic background that, or I should say, underserved, which comes in all hues.
Oh, yes.
And it this requires such a discipline and such a fortitude. And I really believe like we have to help them get mentally ready in any way that we can. And mentorship can give them that for sure. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
absolutely encourage, pre-med students to get this before and during, even during. So even for those that are in practice, now you've been in practice for many years, but I feel like, even those young ones that I taught still connected to, I absolutely ask them, are they connected to someone who's seasoned that could, understands the walk and professional walk that they're in?
Hmm.
Because, again, that only feeling, just that you recognize your dynamics, and know how to navigate it. It's so
Okay.
important to stay connected because, yeah, it's rough out there. It absolutely is. Dr. Peters, thank you so much. Is there
Oh,
anything
gladly.
more you want to share?
Gladly. And I always say, even from early on when they're first starting out, I always encourage whatever they're interested in, whether it's in medicine or whatever other field of health that they're interested in, in which you've already mentioned, is to find a mentor, but
Hmm.
not just a regular mentor, but someone who can really get to know you, who you are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that will be the honesty and open with you and tell you, well, you need to improve upon this. You're not quite
Hmm.
there yet, and they're open with you and they're honest with you about it, making sure you're going in the right direction and tell you where you have your faults or things where you sort of misguided a little bit. And even right now, even though I mentioned those who are underneath me or those who are behind me, I'm still being mentored by those who are above me, those who have been well seasoned, who have been out in the field of National Medical Association. Um, there's so many other organizations out there that helps underrepresented minorities in health fields where they can still mentor you to show you possibilities, options for you, so you don't make mistakes, so you don't make financial mistakes, so you don't make educational mistakes, so you don't make life mistakes, things like that. So you're willing to be mentored, but you're also at the same time mentoring others and still staying humble in the things that you do.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because I definitely wanted to take a minute there. So at the undergrad level, there's the MAPS chapters,
Yes.
right? So the MAPS chapters are, really connecting to science students, giving them the workshops, mentorship, guidance. And then, there is the SNMA chapters
Yes. This is the national
when
medical.
you're in med school.
Yes.
Still, again, networking, workshops, regional, national conferences. I mean, you see yourself, reflection of yourself in the several hundreds when I would go to those conferences. It would just move me to no end.
Oh, yes.
Um, and so now I'm curious, can you inform us when you're in the profession, where's your support? What's your
Right.
network?
You still have those same networks, but they've grown up. Like they become the National Medical Association or the Hispanic Medical Association or the Haitian Medical Association, and they're all you're surrounded by colleagues who have been out in practice from day one, who are first year of practice, for those who made it their complete life and they've been in their entire life, 40, 50 years into practice of medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps you understand the roads that they had to travel, where they made the mistakes along the pathway in their professional careers, looking at the bigger picture and things that may be impacting our population, our people,
Mm-hmm.
that we need to get involved in, either something legally, something politically, or something else otherwise that may have a lifelong impact on the community. Whether some communities have no foods, no jobs, things like that. You say, well, what is my role in all this? Then they help you understand that if they don't survive, you don't survive. Uh,
Right.
and you don't have a legacy after that if you don't help them to survive. And
Mm,
so it becomes important to help us get connected back to our communities, to make sure we're raising up with our STEM programs and people coming behind us in undergrad and high school, elementary school, and even in early elementary school, to get them started interested in the sciences and in medicine. So you have a network of people that you can raise up in the profession, whether it come doctors, lawyers, nurses, medical assistants, scientists, whatever it may be, researchers, things like this. The field is
mm-hmm.
wide open in fields of technology and things like that as well.
Yes, yes. Wow. I tell you, again, appreciate you and all that you do. Thank you so much.
I'm
I
glad.
think this is a wonderful, wonderful contribution. And maybe we can have you back for a part two, honestly.
No,
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, guys. So that'll be it for this episode, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Thanks again to Dr. Peters for spending a moment with us. Appreciate. I say thanks to his family as well for giving us this minute,
Thanks.
and his patience as well. Okay, so thank you. All right. Have a great one.